Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 53 of Oh No Anime, the podcast. It is 11:02 p.m. on Monday, February 5th, 2018. A late start. My name is Mark.
I'm Patrick.
And for good reason, we have a late start today because it is... I don't know what exactly we're calling this yet, but it is the episode where we finally, long awaited, discuss Devilman Crybaby and also... turns out all other Devilman properties in existence. So it's going to be a 10-hour episode, so strap in. I hope you guys are ready. My computer is just going to melt from rendering it.
Can we just focus on the one where him and Cutie Honey fuck?
Yeah, we will be getting to that, trust me. But before we get into anything Devilman related, we have to introduce our panel. Yes, that's right, panel of guests. First off, from the Blade Licking Thieves podcast, personal favorite of mine, very recently at least, it is... Do you want me to call you Grant the Thief or just Grant?
Grant is fine. Grant the Thief is my father, so I'll just stick with...
I see. Come from a long line of thieves.
One day I will inherit the title after defeating him on a mountaintop.
King of the Thieves?
No, Grant is fine.
Grant, thank you so much for joining us, despite all... advice I've given you to the contrary.
No, I never listen to advice. Thanks for having me on. It's great to be here. I'm not an expert in anything, but I will certainly make fart jokes with anybody for a couple hours, so I'm glad to be here, guys.
Oh, perfect.
Well, you're in luck because we are also not experts in anything, despite how much we might talk like we are. So it's good to have you here. Also, a newcomer to the show, someone we're very excited to have, and I can't wait to pronounce his podcast name because it's my favorite thing in the world. From Warui Deshou, it is TheSubtleDoctor. Hello.
Hello, and I am an expert in fucking garbage anime.
How very Warui of you.
I recently discovered that our resident physician here has 2 master's degrees, so you are more of an expert than any of us, I think, in something.
But not an actual doctor, so
I'm
still a disappointment.
It still counts for something.
I think 2 masters add up to a PhD, right? Isn't that how that works?
As long as none of them are in mathematics.
It depends on who you ask.
Well, I'm asking me, and that's what I'm saying. Anyways, Doc, we're going to move on from you now to introduce our final guests. They are return champions to the Oh No Anime, the podcast, and friends of the show. We could not possibly have a Devilman Crybaby without a Crybaby episode without inviting them. It is Danny and Kay from Anime is Lit. Hello, welcome back.
Hello.
So good to have you guys back. I don't know. I listened to y'all's Devilman Crybaby episode, and there was a lot of discussion of horniness on that show. So I'm really hoping that you guys aren't burnt out because it's going to be a feature in today's episode.
Not enough. We honestly thought that we did not cover horniness enough in ours.
Yeah, we got worried.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think also you guys are like, I think we're catching you in like maybe the 2 hours that you could possibly record between recording every other anime podcast in existence. So
yes,
how is being anime podcast celebrities going for you guys?
It sure hit us real fast.
Yeah.
We just happened to hit like 2 weeks where everybody wanted us to guest real fast. So cramming it all in there.
That's cool. Yeah. A really good cure for that is doing something like us and being 2 white men with nothing useful to say. Anyways.
I'm at least half that.
Nobody wants you on your podcast real quick.
Listen, I'm doing this for me. Screw everyone else.
That's all right. I would just talk about Dobutsu Sentai Zyuohger for 30 minutes if I were to ever go on somebody else's podcast. Anyways,
we're going to have all of you on Anime is Lit eventually.
Yes.
We are just so lazy at planning episodes.
Yeah,
you
call
should
me
not
when you do a
that.
Precure episode.
That'll be like a 6-hour episode, unedited.
Hit me up.
It's coming.
Anyway, so we have a lot of material to cover ahead of us. So why don't we jump in? So obviously we have all seen Devilman Crybaby, but I think a good place to start probably would be to kind of go around and say what, if any, of our previous experience or knowledge was about Crybaby before watching Crybaby. Obviously, everybody is a Devilman expert now, having watched Crybaby and gotten way into that series, thankfully. But I also think a lot of people are very new to the Devilman franchise. So, Patrick, I don't think I've ever asked you this question. What is your experience with the Devilman franchise?
Surprisingly little, considering I consider myself a Go Nagai fan. I'd read Cutie Honey and Mazinger Z, and I started reading Devilman, but never finished it. And same with the old school OVAs. I saw the first one. That was it until Crybaby. I need to rectify that soon, but lots of other stuff going on.
Yeah. Grant, I think I remember hearing you telling everybody what your history with Devilman was, but could you reiterate it for us here?
Certainly. My Go Nagai experience is very, very low as a rule. I have seen Crybaby, and I have seen some of the Devilman manga screen caps over the years in mimetic form, if you will. But that's it. I went into this. I knew there were devils. I knew they might be men, and they may or may not cry, as infants are wont to do. But that's really all I knew going.
Your predictions were correct for the most part, I think.
Yes, and I knew it was Go Nagai, so it just kind of Go Nagai is a synonym with infamy, and I knew I was in for something.
Infamy is definitely the right word.
It's funny because this is one of his series that I don't think is a cause of that infamy. This is one of the good ones. You should read the rest.
Yeah, it's kind of everything after his first big three that kind of just... Yeah. Anyways, we'll get into that in a second.
You win some, you lose some.
Doc, what is your history with the Devilman franchise, if any?
With Devilman, it's zilch before Crybaby, but I am a big mecha guy. So I had seen every kind of new rebooted Go Nagai super robot thing, all the new Get a Robo stuff. Armageddon being a personal favorite of mine. I'd seen, Majin Kaiser, Kotetsu Jinji, all those reimagined Go Nagai. So the Yasuhiro Imagawa, Shin Mazinger thing. So I have a lot of experience in all that, but I was less interested at the time. I was diving back into that stuff in Devilman. Shame on me, as I would learn in 2018.
Yeah. Well, I think that's...
Shame on all of us.
That's a mark of a really good reboot, is that it gets everybody back into the original source material, which clearly has been the case for Crybaby, considering how there were exactly 0 Devilman memes on my timeline before Crybaby came out.
2 weeks of nothing but Devilman memes on your
Yeah, now it's literally nothing but Devilman all over my
See, I had a couple people that were like, I'm going to be... hipstery and read the Devilman manga a week before Crybaby comes out and start posting manga memes
jerks.
A couple days before and get in early.
Well, there's always the hipsters.
I'm looking at you, Tom.
Just watching that meme stock market.
Now, Doc, there is speaking of Mazinger, there is as part of this sort of Go Nagai 50th anniversary celebration that Crybaby is a part of, there is a new Mazinger movie coming out later this year. Have you been following that at all?
I've seen some stuff. I don't know the story. I briefly looked at the story synopsis, and it kind of went in my brain and then immediately out again. Right. I've seen footage. I guess there was a trailer. It looks rad.
There are multiple trailers. All I know is that there is a 2018 version of the original Mazinger theme sung by the same guy, who apparently has sung the Mazinger theme in every Mazinger thing from the original until now, which is crazy. But yeah, it looks like Mazinger. It looks like Mazinger Z, which is, I guess, what you would want a Mazinger thing to look like. Danny K, what, if any, are y'all's experience with Devilman or just Go Nagai in general?
Before Crybaby, nothing at all.
Yep.
And then since Crybaby, we've both gone back and read most of the manga, watched the 80s OVA, and we just watched the 2000s Amon Apocalypse OVA.
Oh my god. I
was need Psycho Jenny to erase that from my memory.
Yeah. We'll get into that.
Apocalypse is right. Apocalypse of cinema.
Yeah, so my experience with Go Nagai is actually probably different than anyone else I know, in that the one Go Nagai property I have been very into since even before I started watching anime as regular as I do is Cutie Honey. I actually saw the live action 2005 Cutie Honey movie, which that is the hill that I will die on forever, because it's directed by Hideaki Anno and is as close to a live action actual anime that you will ever get, including like actual like weird live action animation cuts in that movie. It's really weird. Anyway, everybody should watch it because it's a wonderful thing. Also features the voice of Haruko Haruhara in her only live action role as one of the Panther Claw bosses in that movie. It was pretty cool. Anyway, I saw that and became immediately interested in Cutie Honey, and have basically watched a lot of the Cutie Honey anime. I've seen Cutie Honey Re, which is I think the like anime that Anno directed as part of his promotion for that Cutie Honey movie. I've seen some of Cutie Honey R, which is the more like Sailor Moon focused type Cutie Honey series. I've attempted to watch some of the 1970s series and have fallen on my face on it because it's been tough. But yeah, Cutie Honey is basically the one way that I've experienced Go Nagai. Obviously, I've learned a lot through like osmosis, I think, about Go Nagai's other works. Lesser so Get a Robo, but yeah, like definitely a lot about Mazinger and Devilman. I think like a lot of people that I know saw the Devilman versus 009 OVA series that came out, I want to say 2 years ago, which was weird and bad, but in a good way, I guess. I mean, it's definitely exactly what you would expect out of two things that probably should never go together tonally. But yeah, it was. Did
they team up? Please tell me they teamed up.
The main team up consisted of 009, whose name is escaping me, and Devilman himself, like actually teaming up. But most of like the last part was just just full on Devilman. Like it went from like quirky, cheesy thing to like Devilman like ripping a demon in half while like heavy metal blasts and like the cyborgs are nowhere to be seen.
Nice.
It was really weird, and
I'm just glad that I'm glad they continued the blatant misunderstanding of the term versus in these OAVs.
Yeah, I mean, like there are definitely moments where the cyborgs fight like Devilman himself, but it's more like the two universes versus one another. That's a hard thing to say. Anyway, it wasn't good. I wouldn't recommend anybody go watch it unless they're like trying to find the last ever Devilman thing one would want to watch.
How does it compare to Cutie Honey versus Devilman?
Again, we will get to that. And Cutie Honey versus Devilman wasn't a thing. Devilman just showed up in some Cutie Honey OVAs. Anyways, we will get to that because I have actually like some notes prepared for like a brief history of the Devilman franchise, and feel free to jump in at any time, guys, if you have something to say. I'll probably try to engage you on some of this stuff. So obviously we talked about it being a classic sort of multimedia franchise created by the legendary mangaka Go Nagai. I guess infamous mangaka Go Nagai would be another good way to put it. It began in 1972 with a anime TV series adaptation of Nagai's previous work, Demon Lord Dante. And my understanding of how this happened was basically some folks at Toei, who produced the original anime, liked Demon Lord Dante enough to basically approach Nagai and basically said like, hey, we like your work here, we like the themes of it, but we don't really like how the guy doesn't transform into a cool hero / anti-hero, so we want you to rework it and we want to make an anime out of it. So they decided to do that, and what ended up happening was Toei kind of made their own version of the Devilman storyline, while at the same time Go Nagai was working on the original Devilman manga, which kind of became the source book, the ultimate canon of the Devilman as a thing, while the anime is kind of its own thing that proceeds and ends very differently and more lightheartedly than the manga for sure. So there was actually 2 original Devilman manga. The original was serialized in 1972, and then there was a sequel called Shin Devilman that began serialization in 1979. This is sometimes known as Neo Devilman or Devilman 2. Something that I did not know is that there is also a third.
2.
Yeah, I like Neo Devilman a lot. That's a very Japanese title for a thing.
I think we could do a sequel to the current iteration, call it Devilman 2 Cry Harder. I think that's I think that's totally in the cards.
I remember seeing somebody on Twitter.
Named then.
I remember seeing somebody on Twitter saying that like the top search result for Devilman Crybaby was Devilman Crybaby Season 2.
Yes.
How? Why? No.
Like, how the
Just
fuck?
gotta see how that thread resolves. What a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
How the
Super
hell
Fire
did you
and
possibly
Babier.
want this?
More, please. Just pile it on.
Destroy another universe.
So there is also a third and final manga called Devilman Saga that Nagai started in 2014. It is said to complete the Devilman storyline, and this shit is fucking wild, so bear with me. But it takes place in 2025. It follows the roboticist Yuki Fudo, and it also includes an intersex portrayal of Ryo Asuka, who can change their appearance between masculine and feminine at will. I don't know how intriguing that sounds to you guys, but
Hand raised.
Yeah, man.
yeah,
Put me down for intrigued.
That's
Same.
not usually what intersex means, but I'll buy it.
yeah, no, it's not
Japanese intersex.
I don't.
It's
I
different.
don't.
Oh, I see.
Anime.
I don't really. Yeah, I have absolutely no. I have absolutely no conception that very old man Go Nagai will portray a intersex person with any measure of dignity, but
certainly
it's still
not.
I was just thinking it
me.
was like the kid on Mal mischaracterizing when he wrote the summary.
Yeah.
Or what you're eating.
Well, as we get further into the Devilman franchise, you guys will see that is not the only punishment that Ryo Asuka receives at the hands of Go Nagai, as he also is subjected to not that being intersex is a punishment, but I can't imagine that character is particularly nuanced or say well written. Let's just say. Also, if you guys were wondering if Go Nagai's incredibly particular art style ages well, it doesn't.
No.
How long are the sideburns? That's my question.
There are no
eternal.
sideburns. There
what?
are.
It's not
the
Devilman
problem.
then.
That's the problem.
Ooh, okay. I will
Devilman
now question the authenticity of
Yeah.
this supposed
Devilman
Nagai work.
is a cyborg and also a robot suit.
None of that matters. All that matters is the sideburns look like
Listen.
tusks, like on a
So
mech,
he's Devil Mech?
so that he can flip a car with them. That's what's important.
Those are the eyebrows you're thinking of.
I'm assuming the fact that it takes place in the future and follows a roboticist basically, and also features like the main Devil Man design is just like Mecha Devilman basically.
Devil Mech, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Anyways, let's move on from that because it is bad probably.
Warui Deshou.
Devil Mech sounds great. Instead of Devil Man, we have Devil Mech. What's not to love?
All right. So there were several OVAs produced, obviously most notable of which are Devilman the Birth from 1987 and Devilman Demon Bird Celine, from 1990. Created and animated by a studio that I believe no longer exists called O Production. I have definitely not heard them present in any current anime productions. So
How did they not stick around to animate the Big O? What a fucking crime.
it was O like the expression OH exclamation point. O Production, not
there's a big
letter
O in
O
the name.
Production.
Yeah.
I lied, by the way, earlier when I said I didn't have Devilman experience because I forgot. I watched these like 7 years ago.
I should have reminded you because we definitely had a Twitter exchange about it. But
Yes, we definitely did.
yeah, so
Dead brain.
That's called a retcon, children.
I don't know if we want to stop and talk about our experiences with these right now because I know a good portion of this podcast currently has sat down and watched these recently. I know I certainly have. Danny, Kay, I know you guys have.
Oh, yes, we did.
Yeah, I was like cramming for finals.
I don't know if you want to jump in now or wait till we get to like the actual like discussion portion, but I will say there is a lot more Devilman history to get through before we get there, so maybe we should hold it.
Yeah, just go ahead.
Keep going.
I'll just say right now, the only thing I want to say is the eyeball snake is the fucking creepiest thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Also,
Fuck.
still, I think probably the coolest Devilman transformation I've seen so far is from the birth. I think it's so fucking dope looking. So yeah, these are the first anime adaptations that focused a lot more on like the manga storyline. They incorporate a lot more like serious themes like horror, body horror specifically, and just like generally like take a lot of inspiration from like slasher films, especially the second one. If you watch Crybaby and then most of us did, and then go back and watch these, you will notice a shitload of similarities and then realize that a lot of inspiration from Crybaby was taken from these original OVAs and through them, the manga. There is also another OVA. It's called Amon Apocalypse of Devilman. I don't know what the name in Japanese is, but it's really not important.
I think it's just Amon Mokushiroku.
Yep.
Yeah. This was made in the year 2000. It was actually released as a pay-per-view event in Japan, which is a weird thing to think about airing anime.
Pity those people
I'm so
who paid
sorry
to watch
for
it.
them.
Yeah.
Hell in a Cell.
Not short review, not good from what I've heard.
Wrestling.
And then
That
there is
became weirdly like a thing for OVAs, right? Like, didn't a bunch of Saint Seiya OVAs, weren't they pay-per-view?
they
around
tried
that
it
time?
for a while.
They tried it. Now basically the same thing, or just those like 30, 45-minute things that you have to go to the theater for.
Yeah. It's, I mean,
Yeah.
they
That seems
tried
like a
it.
more monetizable thing.
It is.
It was a lot more popular. It was a lot more popular on like satellite networks. They have a big satellite network that plays a lot of anime over there called Wow Wow. And from my understanding, Wow Wow and like other satellite, like, you know, big network providers that don't necessarily have a whole lot more like network constrictions on them, like the terrestrial TV channels in Japan did a lot of pay-per-view events, I think, before the technology to like actually distribute anime well was invented. AKA the internet.
Please
Yeah,
tell me
and
Victor from Yuri on Ice is the spokesman for Wow Wow.
he should be if he
Wow.
hasn't already.
Wow.
And then I mentioned before, but yeah, there's the Cyborg 009 versus Devilman 3-episode OVA from 2015. Again, not really something that anybody interested in Devilman will ever want to check out unless they want to watch some weird, dumb shit. But it's there. It's on US Netflix if you want to watch it. It's not exactly worth watching, but it's there.
Netflix is a graveyard of bad Cyborg 009 CG things.
Oh, God.
You're not
I
wrong.
was just telling Patrick about Call of Justice, which I have yet to see, but I am going to watch at some point. But
Oh, man.
yeah. Anyway, so
I made the sign of the cross for you just then.
yeah, I'm going in. I'm going deep into Kenji Kamiyama's hell, but luckily I enjoy that type of hell. So
What happened?
anyways, so Devilman also shows up numerous times in other Go Nagai works, and this is not really a phenomenon that is limited to Devilman. Go Nagai likes to kind of incestuously mush together his properties in a lot of ways. So there was a very notable Mazinger Z versus Devilman movie from 1973 that seems to be pretty damn popular in both fandoms. I've never seen it, but I hear it's kind of all right. And then yeah, Patrick, you were saying before, Devilman appears in the 1994 Cutie Honey OVA's New Cutie Honey for a couple episodes, and the storyline is not necessarily that important so much as it is implied that Cutie Honey and Devilman fucked, which is
That's important.
very
just because
important.
it's important.
Yeah, it's very important. Devilman
Go Guy did this himself. This
Devilman
isn't Dojinshi.
is like he's like talking smack or whatever to Honey, and then he's just like, "Oh yeah, and thanks for the trip to paradise last night," or something like that. And like Honey's friend looks
Imagine-
over and is like, "What the fuck did you do?"
Imagine how bad a Gonagai written sex scene would be, and then imagine it being just as bad, but without being explicit. That's what happened.
Here's the thing, though. Devilman is literally like the pinnacle of what it is to fuck, and
yes,
Cutie Honey is literally a like sex android. So imagine how good that fucking must have been. It's like,
if I may, I don't think that actually happened. I think that's just how he ends every conversation with people. He literally just at the end, he doesn't even have to. He can just end a conversation.
If I could have a time machine, my one trip would be to Comic-Cat after that came out and pick up some of those doujinshi.
Oh yeah,
for real.
I was just thinking that.
Yeah,
fantastic era manga has been made of Devilman and Cutie Honeys.
Do that, doujinshi.
Yeah, that's your goal. You asked me if you wanted you to do anything in Japan. I want you to find me some doujinshi from 1994.
Alrighty, Mandarake, here we go.
Yeah. All right, so
you have to order it with your eyebrows. They'll know by your eyebrows. That's what
yes. So here's another thing that Danny and Kay, you guys would probably be particularly interested in, and I don't know if you guys know about this already through your own research, but there's actually a spin-off manga that happened from 1997 to 2000 called Devil Lady or Devilman Lady.
I have heard of Devilman Lady.
Yeah.
It's weird. I want to say I had actually heard of Devil Lady before I ever heard of Devilman.
I think there's like a poorly animated OAV that
there
manga
is.
video put out. I feel like
there is. So this is also, again,
by the way, that was a short anecdote. For whatever reason, like my uncle, like was his only like exposure to anime. So to him, anime is Devil Lady. I had to like talk him off that ledge once.
It could be worse.
Like no,
that's true.
It's not.
It could somehow be worse.
It could be a monopocalypse.
Yeah, honestly,
yeah. Yeah.
Fair enough.
But Devil Lady in true Gonagai fashion is fucking buck wild. So the main character's name is Jun Fudo, and it features appearances from Akira Fudo as an ethereal spirit, and Ryo, a reincarnated Dante Alighieri, as
why not?
in Dante's Inferno.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've watched some of the anime just for shits and giggles on YouTube, and it is horrifically bad. It looked like Stripperella, honestly, is the closest approximation.
Stan Lee's Devilman.
Yep.
Wow.
A Spike TV original.
That is not something I ever thought I was going to remember.
Yep. Voiced by Pamela Anderson. Everybody's favorite anime. Anyways,
right after wrestling.
Yep, exactly. So there was also a 2004 tokusatsu adaptation of Devilman, but I literally could not find anything else about it in English other than that exists. Like that's
Grant. This is your
Grant,
your assignment. I think.
I wish I had seen this. I mean, look, one of the big things that's a problem with Crybaby as a rule is there are no attack names shouted at all.
That's
there
true.
Are no poses done, so you don't know what anybody's doing. It's very confusing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I don't know. I don't know. Like I literally the only place that I could find was that this exists was the Wikipedia article and then like the link to like whatever it was, basically proving that this person was not just telling a lie on Wikipedia.
Well,
like,
when we are worthy as a people, it will be released from the vault.
Clearly.
We've transcended our corporeal forms and we've earned that right. Then we'll witness it.
Yeah. All right, so
it's got an entry on the Tokupedia.
So. Oh shit! All right, what do we got? What are we looking at?
It's a poster.
Grant, you run Tokupedia, right?
It's true.
That
Tokupedia is
that doesn't look that bad, actually.
I mean, the poster.
All right, so that kind of concludes the history of the Devilman franchise. Is there anything that anyone would like to add about what we just talked about before we move on?
I need to take more of this in because I really like Devilman.
And let me go back to the Tokusatsu real quick. There's one note on Tokupedia. It says The film was critically panned by movie reviewers and Devilman fans for its mostly bad acting, disjointed and confusing story, and overuse of CGI. In an online poll, it was ranked the third worst live-action film adaptation of an anime or manga.
God damn. What could
Wow.
possibly be
Man.
number one?
Dragon Ball Evolution?
Oh, yeah, probably.
God.
Motherfucker.
We speak not of the Goku Satsu. It's
Yeah.
not needed.
By the way, by the way, did you say that that third Devilman manga was from 2014?
Yes.
What the
Yeah,
Why?
it is.
Why?
Gonagai started a manga, and Gonagai has not stopped working since the 70s. He has consistently published manga every single year since like probably late 60s, I want to say, is when he started. So yeah, he has not stopped working for almost 50 years.
Powerhouse.
Yeah, the guy, I mean, yeah, powerhouse of cranking out mostly shit, but
Sit down, Ichiro Oda.
yeah. Yeah, I have absolutely no illusions that the third Devilman Saga, I have absolutely no illusions that it is good. I don't think it is. I think it's terrible, probably. But like, cause like I said, like Gonagai's art style has not aged well at all. Like, he has not made an attempt to update his art style with the ages. It still looks like the original Devilman manga, like, which is like, it's cute, but not necessarily like very good, unfortunately. And like, I'm not saying that as like, you know, like I'm a better artist than Gonagai. Obviously I'm not, but still, it's not, his art style has not aged particularly well in 2018. But I don't know that Devilman Saga is available legally anywhere in the US, and it's probably not available legally anywhere in Japan either, because it's probably been banned.
That checks out.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm super terrible at guiding discussion. The two other like giant sections I have in my notes are like, I have a very detailed notes on Crybaby's production. And then I also have a lot of the differences between Crybaby and the manga that I've like tried to compile, and like similarities. So I don't know if we want to just start talking about Crybaby and our reactions to it, or what?
So would you call Crybaby good?
Would I call Crybaby good? Yeah, I mean, that's a loaded question, I guess, but
I would as well. I feel like I enjoyed it a lot less than most people in similar podcasting circles. I enjoyed it, but it didn't do for me as much as I think it did everybody else. I watched it, I enjoyed it, and I was like, this is something that I can show people that aren't into anime, and they would probably enjoy it. And
Yeah.
that's really where it ended for me. I watched it once, I enjoyed it. I showed some people, they enjoyed it too. I did not get a lot out of it.
yeah, I don't know. I
Unfollowing you on Discord now? And unfollowing you on Twitter.
Blocked and reported.
I think I had a pretty similar reaction to most people that are like liking it a lot. Obviously, like I don't know if I, up until this point, would ever describe myself as a fan of Masaki Yuasa. I know him and his works is
For me,
probably the most extensive I could say about him. My first exposure to him was actually, he did 2 episodes of Space Dandy. And I thought they were among my least favorite because they were great things, but they were terrible episodes of Space Dandy in that they had absolutely nothing to do with Space Dandy.
See, I'm the complete opposite. I went into this considering myself a big fan of Masaki Yuasa. I discovered him with Kaiba in like 2007 or 8, I want to say. And this had like, while the end message was similar to a lot of things that he strives to do in his work, I didn't feel like the violence and everything suited him. I feel like he's better at doing it his own way, especially in things like ping pong.
I feel like I'm glad. Like, I don't know. I'm glad that he was able to.
I wasn't
to get
turned
out of his
off by
own
the
box a little
violence.
bit.
I thought it was weird for Yuasa.
I would consider myself a fan of Yuasa now, but I also feel like he's just had this in him for like his entire career, and he's just been kind of waiting for the the right moment to let it out, because like most of the stuff that he does is either like all ages or like just like straight up like children's stuff. Like especially at least one of the movies last year could certainly be considered like a tween or children's
I haven't
movie.
seen either of them. I need to get on that. I'm a big fan.
That's interesting that you say that, because I always, like, when I think about the Yuasa that I've seen, which is his earlier stuff, right, from Catsup to Mind Game to Kemonozume, Kaiba, and Tatami, that all seems like not for kids. Not that it's like particularly graphic, just the subject matter is complex.
Yeah, I don't know who Catsup is for, but definitely not kids.
Stoners.
Yeah, definitely never. I mean, again, I'm not super well versed in Yuasa either. I've seen Mind Game before this, but my take on a lot of his works, or my understanding of them, you know, at a distance, was never that they were for children per se. I'm not sure I would show Mind Game to children. Maybe that's just my own biases, but
yeah, no, I'm with you on Mind Game. But even stuff like Tatami, like, is why you could like air it on TV without a problem. Like, I've found his stuff to be generally pretty high-minded.
Yeah, I guess my intention with that statement was more just that like I never felt as if his work was aimed at a specific audience or demographic, whereas like Devilman Crybaby is very obviously an adult, like a very adult aimed, adult centric type of thing. It's also way more mainstream than really anything that he's ever done, excluding the last two movies that Science Saru did, because Lou Over the Wall and The Night is Short, Walk On Girl are probably the closest that studio and him as a director have come to like mainstream productions. And I think that's kind of the way that he and them are swinging, especially now after Crybaby was such a huge success.
Yeah, you got to get the money back to do the weird shit.
Watch out, the next Miyazaki.
Jesus Christ. There's already a gun to my head.
He would be so offended if you said that.
I know.
He would be so mad.
I'm the next Miyazaki.
But yeah, I don't know. I would say the one thing that I differ on from everybody else that I've heard discussing Crybaby is, you know, obviously everybody's been talking about episode 9. Episode 9 is where everything finally breaks down and the tears flow and everything. And I don't know if it was because I was binging it and I was just so emotionally burnt out and just burnt out on everything by the time that I got to it. But like I was definitely like sad when I watched episode 9. Like deep down somewhere inside me there were feelings, but like all the rest of the layers up to the surface were just kind of just like oh no, knife, bad. Like I just like was barely feeling anything by the time I got there. Like there was never a moment in Crybaby where I actually cried or felt really powerful emotions. And like even like I know the ending is supposed to be like a tremendously emotional moment for Satan or Ryo, and I think I was experiencing the exact same feeling that I did when I watched End of Evangelion for the first time, where I was just completely disassociated with what I was seeing for my own good. I think I just kind of do that when like I'm watching something that is like truly apocalyptic in a way that like frightens the shit out of me. Like I don't like the idea of like the entire human race going bye-bye in the span of like a couple hours. That's a fucking terrifying thought.
You are the evolved me. Like, you are smart and you protect your heart. I let that shit in and I let it destroy me.
Same.
Yeah, I guess as a countertake to both of those, which were
it's weird because that's not like it's not how I usually am. Usually I'm like cry at the drop of a hat. But I guess, you know, the type of stuff in like death is very like very little what makes me cry or what makes me emotional, and maybe that makes me sound super fucked up, but
I think part of it might be at this point in Devilman Crybaby, you're kind of conditioned for everybody to fucking die.
Yeah,
like you're used to it by this point. You're just like, oh, there's another one.
I definitely saw it coming from a mile away. There's like, you know, when literally everyone else is dying around you, and Crybaby has made every effort to show you that like nobody is sacred and nobody, like nobody is free from like what the show is trying to tell you, then like obviously you can see it coming. It doesn't lessen the blow, but I think, I think were I to have not binge watched it, it probably would have been a much different result. I probably would have gotten pretty emotional, but it was like, it was like fucking 1 a.m. and I was 9 episodes deep in this thing and 4 hours in and just kind of like had just been like, all right, well, I got to finish this. And like, yeah, I think I had the same reaction that most people that I saw on my Twitter at least were having, which is just like, well, that was a thing. And
then came the memes.
And yeah, well, then came the memes, but then it came everybody actually like thinking about it, I think developing their own sort of nuanced opinions on it. And like, I still to this day, like, I don't even know if I'm allowing myself to have an opinion on like how Crybaby ended, but mostly because like, I don't know if I have anything useful or like new to say about it. Mostly just like, other than like, I thought it was good. I thought it reminded me a hell of a lot of End of Evangelion, probably a lot on purpose, considering how much Evangelion was originally influenced by Devilman in the first place. So I don't know. This is a good thing to talk about. How did the ending make you guys feel? Because I think the ending is really obviously the most important part of Crybaby for a lot of people.
Do we still want to do general like reflections on the show, or like
I think it's a good jumping off. I like, it doesn't have, we don't have to structure it too much. I just I'd like to know y'all's thoughts on the ending, and then maybe we can work backwards.
How did it hit you in the feels, Grant?
Oh, well, I mean, I guess to talk about the ending, I have to talk about the show as a whole. I mean, for myself, unlike these, I guess the idea that like you guys didn't seem to react to it too much or were emotionally numb by the end, I sort of felt it the whole time. In a lot of ways, I guess I would speak by analogy, sort of like a mother who on Mother's Day, her ungrateful children have made her breakfast and have made her all of her favorite things and brought them to her in a surprise. It was touching and it was emotional and everything was there. Some of it was a little overcooked or poorly prepared, but I treasured that moment very dearly and I was very appreciative. And then halfway through breakfast, I realized I was also in like a sensory deprivation tank the entire time, and it got really weird. So I deeply, deeply felt it, and I enjoyed a lot of it. I think it's uneven in places, and I don't by any means think it's perfect. I think it has some, and this is where it gets into touchy territory for me, as someone who their life experience would largely be described as, a vanilla scoop of ice cream, no toppings. I struggle to talk about good representation or effective representation, or, oh, this is meaningful, this isn't. And I know there's a lot of subtext that I'm probably missing, but I felt like it certainly played with a lot of themes that we don't often see, certainly not with fidelity or with emotional, like with a lot of emotional truth to it. And I feel like the ending, in all of that, I feel like the ending was very strong. I think that was probably, for me, episode 9 was just like, it wasn't the most, it's not the thing that stuck with me the longest. As I talked about in my pod, one of the earlier moments in the series and some of the earlier themes surrounding abuse, particularly sexual abuse, I think were the most haunting for me. But episode 9 and the ending was very, very impactful, and I have some kind of big picture thoughts on it, but that would involve me talking even longer. I want to hear other people talk.
Yeah, man, go ahead.
What do you feel the significance of the ending is in the context of the representation you were talking about? Then was it just everything sucks? Was that the ending? Because that's what I felt like. Just like because there was this whole scene, they made the big deal of acceptance right at the end there, with the children going up and hugging his leg and everything. That just ended with everybody dead anyway.
Well, that involves me unpacking. I kind of want to hear other people's thoughts before I get into my big, wild, beautiful mind, newspapers on the wall theory on the ending. I kind of want to hear, because it's going to be a lot for me to talk about that. So I'd kind of like to hear other people's thoughts. I found the ending very effective, and I have my reasons.
Danny and Kay, you guys had a lot to say on your podcast about the ending in particular, like the very, very ending. So I don't want to have you reiterate that too much because that would be boring for you and for anyone that should be listening to your podcast. So is there anything that you guys, I know you mentioned earlier that you felt like there are some things that you didn't talk about, you feel like you didn't talk about in the show. Is there anything specifically related to the ending and maybe that something that will allow you to expand a little bit more on Crybaby that you feel like you could probably expound on or something like that?
We just love suffering.
Yeah, I will talk about...
This show's right up our alley.
I will talk about how much I love the ending until the cows come home.
Yeah. Like on just an experience level, I think we benefited from the fact that we did not binge it all the first time.
No, not all at once. We did it over 3 days.
And just like let it keep us up at night, which was like a good experience personally. I think like I benefited from the fact that I came in with not low expectations production wise, but I came in like thematic wise with low expectations.
Yeah, I expected it to be a spectacle and basically nothing else. And I was like down for the fun. And I didn't know that I also needed to be down for the pain.
I did not expect it to be so like coherent and like have so much messaging.
And like so many very like intentional, trackable motifs and plot threads.
Yeah, like going back and reading the manga, I kind of expected it to be like that, where it was like a lot kind of disjointed and just like too crazy for its own good in terms of like coherency. But like going back and reading the manga, it seems like Crybaby started with the ending and worked from there. Like that was because like that you also said like that's pretty much his take on the series. So yeah, and just like he just made it very clear from the beginning what he wanted that series to be about, and then just said it over and over and over again, and like I eat that shit up. Yeah,
and like the themes that Yuasa likes to work with in a lot of his stuff are things that I like a whole lot.
Yeah.
So
it's like super over the top in how much it like preaches those themes, but I kind of am nerdy and love that.
Yeah.
It was interesting because Yuasa, sorry to interrupt, Yuasa generally does like all originals, which is rare in anime. And he's concise in his messaging in that. So it's interesting to see him go from the Devilman manga where it's got hints of these things, but to be able to like really hone it down and have a strong message like the rest of his other work, despite the fact that it's an adaptation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like on an enjoyment level, I think like things that I tend to have really emotional experiences watching anime are like if the acting is good, and it sure as heck was.
Yeah. And
the music, and then like that extra touch of directing, like all three of those things individually will get me, but they all got me at once. And so like I like that show had me exactly where it wanted me, and I just ate it up.
All right, Doc, do you have anything to you have any initial reactions from Crybaby as a whole, either related to the ending or not?
Yeah, I mean, I have some reactions that'll probably sound hyperbolic to a lot of people because
lay 'em on me.
As Danny and Kay know, like we had a 4-hour podcast on this that's about to be released here in a couple of days. I talked like I love the shit out of this show and pretty much everything about it. The ending, like it was one of those things that affected my mood for days afterward. Like I just couldn't stop thinking about the imagery I had seen, what it meant to me, what Yuasa and the other writers were trying to say. Because like Kay said, you know, and Danny too, like I didn't, despite being familiar with Yuasa's work, like I didn't really have any expectations per se for this, like because I was so unfamiliar, despite having seen Devilman. Like those two OAVs, like I don't know, they were just these weird like creepy action horror things. Like I didn't really know what I was in for. Like I expected it to be, here's where Basaki Yuasa gets to play a little bit, like, but God, I mean, he really, like, it was just so much more than that. And I feel like, I mean, for me, almost everything about the show came together really, really well. Like, I've rewatched it. I didn't binge it either. Like, I kind of watched it in chunks. I actually binged the rewatch, and like I feel like I could watch it a third time and still learn new things and still pick up on how things tie together and little subtleties of everything. And but yeah, I thought the ending in particular I thought is one of the more audacious endings in anime that I've seen in quite a while. I mean, I also thought of End of Evangelion. But again, like I said, unfortunately, I did not disassociate myself while watching it. Like it hurt me. It hurt me real bad. But also, I found it. I found that because of what happens in the very end. I found it optimistic and sort of affirming the good in humanity, despite all the horrible destruction and death sort of surrounding that final scene.
I want to lay something kind of meta on you guys for a second, because I've been thinking a lot about Crybaby in the past few days leading up to this in its context as sort of a moment in anime history and fandom. And to me, really, Crybaby is important, I think, more than anything else because, and Grant, you mentioned this a little bit earlier in the sense of what themes it sort of tackles and how those themes are not at all common in, the anime that's getting made today. And I've been starting to realize more and more that I think Crybaby is kind of not necessarily like a wake-up call, but definitely like a reminder of like the potential of anime as a medium and how I don't really think that potential is being utilized as much as it was. Maybe, I mean, it's certainly, anime is definitely focused on telling a much wider breadth of stories than it ever has, and that's really cool. But there's also not really any anime like Devilman Crybaby that are being made today, and I think a lot of that is because in a lot of ways Crybaby is a huge throwback to the sort of like hyper violent, hyper sexual way that like anime was at the height of the like sort of like 80s OVA and film boom, but also is probably way better in 2018 than anything that was made back then, only because it is calling to attention a lot of like really important and interesting stuff that probably none or a whole lot of those OVAs were doing. So I don't know, how do you guys feel about like Crybaby's place in, like, let's just say the annals of 2018? Like, do you guys think that we're still going to be talking about the show? Not necessarily at the end of the year, like in end of the year anime discussions, but like, do you guys think that this show is going to last ultimately?
Well,
yes, I will still be talking about it. Me, absolutely. Like I said on my podcast, and this is where the hyperbole comes in. I said the 90s, there's Evangelion. The aughts, there's Bakemonogatari. The 2010s, there's Devilman Crybaby.
That's a lot. I
think it's that good, and that's how highly I think of this show.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see how history treats it, and I agree. I did the most popular tweet I've ever done on Twitter was talking about how I like the ways in which this challenges you as a fan. It reminded me a lot of being 8-9 years old and seeing anime for the first time and being sort of shocked and bewildered by what I saw and almost like nervous that someone would catch me watching it because it felt scandalous and weird. So it was...
Wait a minute. Is that more popular than your Castlevania tweet?
Yes, by orders of magnitude, thankfully.
Okay, well, I have to get back on my retweet game then of your Castlevania tweet. Excuse me.
It's a game we play, a battle in heaven, if you will. No, but the thing that I think is very important about Cryberry is that Cryberry. I keep doing that.
Cereal spinoff.
It's a new cereal from Post.
Weeping fruit. Oh, Jesus Man Weeping Fruit. No, okay.
My trusty old dog.
Devilman Crybaby. The thing that's interesting about it is confluence of being visually exciting, thematically relevant. It's accessible, and it's also shocking. And that sort of those overlapping forces, I think, make it really important, because even if it's not perfect, whether it's the greatest of or just one of the greats, I don't know. That's for fandom to decide, and for personal lists and so on and so forth. But I think what is important about it is that a lot of people will see it. It will shock a lot of people, new and old fans. And I don't feel like Devilman Crybaby is something you can walk away from and not discuss. I feel like it's something you don't just go, and you just turn away from it. Even if it left you cold, you're going to discuss why it left you cold. I feel like it's something that has to be talked about, and it has to be unpacked. And as someone who spends all of their hobby time unpacking media, I think that's really, really important to have a work that almost universally gets people to turn in the seat to the person next to them and be like, okay, let's talk, because I've just seen some things. So for me, that is perhaps its greatest strength, is that it encourages and almost demands discussion. It grabs you by the shoulders and shakes you and says, talk about what I'm talking about, and you can't look away.
I certainly have not seen a show, at least in my very short time on Annie Twitter, that has so handily grabbed hold of the narrative and kept it there for an impressive amount of time. Like, there's basically, like, all of January of 2018 for me was basically entirely encapsulated by, Devilman Crybaby, on at least on like all the places that I was checking, at least Twitter.
Sound Euphonium, he became Euphonium, did it when it first came out, but the discourse was not nearly as fun.
Yeah, that's the other thing, is that like Devilman Crybaby is a show that I think in a lot of ways, and I think this is sort of inherent to a lot of Masaki Yuasa's work, is it doesn't really take itself, it takes itself super seriously while also not really taking itself that seriously.
Yeah.
It makes it very easy to joke about,
totally.
I think, which is nice. It's actually something that, weirdly enough, it's the same sort of feeling I get when I read Junji Ito's works, surprisingly enough, is the ability to laugh at what I'm seeing, to deal with the insane terror that I also feel while watching or while looking at his stuff, is sort of the same thing as like, I am going to be emotionally broken if I can't make a meme about these gay devil boys.
Totally. Totally. He's really great about like giving audiences kind of a vent or a let out, like to really like decompress a little bit. I think Danny pointed this out on our show, like the worst kind of most crushing moment for a lot of people in Crybaby was the death of Miki Makimura. Yeah. And after that happened, you get the really lovely kind of serene post-credits scene for a few minutes to just, it just feels like Yuasa is there patting you on the shoulder saying, I know that was really hard and you made it through it.
Yeah, it's basically every heavy emotional beat in the show is followed up by like, you can almost feel yourself breathing back in afterwards, because the show like gives you a space.
Yeah, whether that's like to breathe out or to laugh at the silly rapping boys.
Well,
like
I think that's a testament to its emotional truth, because what is laughter in real life if not a way to keep from crying? Really, I mean, that's exactly that's exactly its function as our existence as suffering creatures on this little ball in space. And so just like in Devilman, you laugh at things so that you don't suffer constantly, and I think that's part of it. I think that's what makes it feel so natural, because it's funny and it's gross and it's scary and it's triumphant and it's dark, and it's just it contains the multitudes of human experience in a show about a devil monster thing running around like a weird gangly marionette.
I also think that there
Devilman Laugh Baby, that's season 2.
Oh, yes, of course.
I also think that there is a certain amount of comedy to some of the more like almost comically shocking moments in the first half of the series. I think the series definitely gets a lot more serious, obviously, as you go through it. But like some of the opening episodes have some genuinely like jaw-dropping violence in them that is so comically over the top that I couldn't help but laugh at it. And like, I don't know about y'all, but there are definitely also moments like in the I want to say it's either the first episode, I want to say it's the second episode, when the two girls are trying to get into the classroom and one of them just grabs the other and just starts like mock
I cried.
like fucking her. I laughed so fucking hard at that scene, and also have never felt.
That was a
I've
great
also
scene.
never felt more love for a certain pair of characters in an anime than that moment.
I think
But
you're
also,
right,
I mean, like, there's like the moment where you see like Akira's like insane bulge, and then there's like the part where he wakes up from a wet dream with his ceiling covered in cum. Like, there are some genuinely hilarious moments in that series that I think are played for shock, but they're also played very humorously. And I think that is like very much Masaki Yuasa's touch in there, because his works have such a playfulness to them that like a lot of creators just don't have. And I think if anybody else were to have tackled the series, it would have been a lot less enjoyable, mostly because like there's a lot of levity.
You just made me you made me imagine like Mamoru
Oh my
Oshii.
gosh.
Oh, Jesus
I am
Christ.
serious. This is fucking serious. You will not laugh.
Made me imagine if Urobuchi rewrote it. I was just like, oh,
yeah,
God.
actually,
no
I can't.
thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually can't.
Yeah.
Kenji Kamiyama's Devilman Crybaby.
Stop it. Stop
I-
it.
Stephen Chow's Devilman Crybaby.
Yeah, Mark, I think you're onto something. I think that like Yuasa's style, at least in Crybaby, like he encourages you to have multiple emotions at once, and like a lot of them.
Mm.
And it's not like every beat is like one type of emotion. And I think his like style of exaggeration, like even his like animation exaggeration, to the point where it's like all like some people kind of find his character styles like ugly almost, and like he kind of pushes that boundary of like, I don't know, what looks good and exaggeration to like, I guess, elevate small emotions to feel huge.
Yeah.
I think.
And I think I agree. And I think to an even more extreme point, I mean, there are moments where in what's the Sabbath, when we first start seeing the people transforming into demons, and if you compare those sequences with the same sequences from the Birth OVA, it is shockingly different, because the sequences from the Birth are like genuinely disturbing and fucked up, and make you really like feel pain on behalf of the people that are like literally getting their bodies torn to shreds. Whereas like in Crybaby, it's almost as if you're watching like somebody take the liquid out of a neon, like the liquid light out of a neon sign, and just like throw it on a wall. Like that's kind of like what you're seeing. It's like so ridiculously.
My podcast partner said, like, the way he put it, I thought was really apt. He said that it looked like it's animated like the inside of a lava lamp.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, it's very freeform. It's very like almost like stream of consciousness. Like you can tell that they just kind of, Yuasa was just like, let's just like fucking go.
Yeah, sure. Let's have these boobs grow into mouths and eat somebody.
And eat a dude's head. Yeah.
Sure.
Which is not the first time that has happened in Devilman, I must point out.
No.
A tit has eaten something multiple times in Devilman.
In
It
most
is,
iterations.
some would say it is a central theme to Devilman, is tits that eat.
The central theme to Go Nagai
Speaking-
is...
Yeah.
Speaking of ways that the 2000 Amon Apocalypse movie is wrong, I did not think that anything could top a tit eating someone, but in that movie, Devilman tears off another demon's tits and eats them.
Okay.
Oh, no.
Okay.
He's like, hey,
That
this
doesn't
is wrong.
happen.
You're doing it wrong.
The
That sounds great.
circle of life.
I don't know.
moves us all.
I don't know
There's all
why.
this something.
I don't know why you guys didn't like that. That sounds fantastic.
It was also like, it was even like the first 2 minutes of that movie were more fucked up than if you took all
honestly.
of Crybaby and distilled it into a syrup. Like,
awesome.
it was
And
like
not in a fun way.
not in a fun way at all. A demon tried to rip Miko in half crotchwise.
Yeah.
And I
Jesus
was like,
Christ.
I'm gonna throw up.
It sounds like it was
Also-
violent for the sake of violence, which I never felt like Crybaby was.
Yeah. Crybaby's violence was always serving some sort of function, either to like just
to
shock
make
the
you
viewer
uncomfortable,
outright,
yeah.
or just like to look cool. Like that was the other thing is like rarely do I see violence that I say looks cool or interesting visually, but the violence in Crybaby was so like over the top in how creative it was creating scenarios for people to die in the most ridiculous ways possible that like I was always just like genuinely impressed by like their imagination almost. Like
for me, that was like coming home as a Fist of the North Star fan. That is like 1000% where I live. I'm like, yes, good creative deaths, which are both ultra violent and very funny. Yes,
I think I think that's like a particular similarity to like its sort of roots in this like 80s like hyperviolence culture is. That's sort of a central theme in just like, what's the most fucked up way we could get somebody to die? And Masaki Yuasa has taken it to its logical conclusion, which is like, what's the most fucked up, unrealistic, and hilarious way that we could get a person that nobody cares about to just like get ripped to shreds or transformed into like a giant tit that eats some dude.
I'm not going to call the violence in Fist of the North Star purposeless. It has its own different purpose, which we can discuss another time.
Clearly, yeah.
But I think that the important thing for Devilman Crybaby is because, I mean, spoiler alert, it's all predicated by the actions of Satan. That it is wanton and it is excessive and it is inhuman because its perpetrator is. Yeah. And that is part of the thematic. So it's like there's a foundation here this is built on. And of course it is meant to excite and to terrify and all that sort of thing and to be comedic, but it has a narrative purpose. Like there's a reason Rio is running around with a broken bottle starting, wanton chaos from the word go. Because that's exactly what Rio wants. And that's part of his story or, the story throughout the whole thing. Like that's the nice thing about it is that Crybaby, like Danny and Kay were saying earlier, that going into this thinking, I'm just in for some really infamous visuals here, but that whether they piece together the coded message Go Nagai left behind or whether it's added in, I don't know. But there's a strong thematic underpinning to basically everything that happens in the show. And it's really, really satisfying. Very satisfying.
Yeah, I was down for basically all the violence, except for that one part near the end where the scientists are experimenting on the Devilman and they're in tubes and getting
That is definitely
milked.
A manga reference.
Yes.
I all threw up in my mouth.
We have
while
an
that
explanation
happened.
for that.
Oh my god. Lay it on me.
That particular. It was in the manga, the character that is like that Miko is loosely based off of, that is her Devilman power.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Or the,
yes.
Yeah.
Like sort of gushing from various suggestive holes.
Yeah.
You may have been experiencing sensory overload, but in episode 10, this happens.
That's what I'm trying to understand. She is on the supply side of this power, not the demand side of that power.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Demand is a strong word.
I'm just making sure. Okay.
She also shows up in the 2000s Amon movie. It's horrifying.
Yeah. That Miko character has those powers. Ends up being forced to use them, and then gets kidnapped and experimented on, and Akira rescues her
in like just a weird manga side story.
Yeah, there's like a really small subplot where like human scientists are experimenting on devilmen and trying to like breed them, and that doesn't go well. That's kind of what that's a reference to, but it's kind of weird and out of place.
That's a great
in
idea.
Episode 10.
So yeah, that is why that person is there being milked.
I see.
So you guys actually just brought up
that person knows something Masaki Yuasa did. He knows where a body's buried or something. He got a shout out in that discordant.
Danny and Kay, you guys just brought up something that I have pretty extensive notes on, and that is one of the key differences. Obviously, Crybaby is a adaptation of technically it is an adaptation of the original manga, but there are several key differences, so I thought we could go through some of them now, especially since Danny, you've been reading the manga, right?
Yeah.
Or both of you have.
Yeah, we both have.
Do you want to just go through the ones that we found, like that we all found the most interesting that are different?
I think first of all, the most glaring one is so Miki, aka Miko Kuroda, and Cocoon / Mayuta, which is the other devil man, the runner / one of the MCs, are
Butterfly.
Yeah, are new characters that have not appeared in any Devilman properties before this. Obviously, you guys said that Miko is a reference to Mikiko Kawamoto, who
Mostly
is a
in name
supporting
only.
character.
Yeah.
Yeah, in name only. Her nickname in the original manga is Miko, but it's usually westernized as Miko, whereas in Crybaby, Miko's name is Miko. And that's just like kind of a nickname, and they have completely different names and completely different powers and stuff, but it's likely just a reference. One of the other key differences that I really want to talk about is the delinquents. So in the original manga and the OVAs, they were like, your traditional Yankee delinquents with the like school uniforms and pompadours and everything. Very, very 70s and 80s ideas of like what delinquents were. And in Crybaby, they have been changed to sort of not hip hop stereotypes, but definitely like a very common idea of like what people who are in Japan and like hip hop stuff is, because hip hop and hip hop culture in Japan is seen as like very rebellious and very like outside the norm. So you also kind of like wanted to update those characters. Now, Danny and Kay, you guys brought up probably one of the most interesting commentaries I have seen on these characters so far, in that they function as what is called a Greek chorus, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Like almost like
Yes.
definitionally, like everything you can check off for a Greek chorus is what they do. Like they just are one.
Yeah. So basically they're like at times providing an interlude and also commenting on like the state of affairs in the show. And they do so through some of the most fire ass lines I have. The hottest fire I've ever heard spit in an anime, for sure. And part
also,
of the reason
they tell
for
you
that,
that guns and drugs are bad, which I appreciate.
Yeah. And part of the reason for that is that they are voiced by actual like working Japanese hip hop MCs, including Ken the 390, who is not not a small hip hop star, is in fact like one of the most recognizable names, at least on my list of Japanese MCs, which is pretty cool. I won't go into Japanese hip hop and hip hop culture. That's for another podcast, but
Which you should make.
what did you guys think of the delinquents in this show and their role, especially like towards the end, because they achieves a much more active role towards the end of the show?
I kind of like when I started reading through the manga, they were really different tonally on purpose. But I was surprised actually by the end how much they kind of lined up as you go deeper into the story and towards the end, where like they sort of turn good and they hang out with Miki and they end up protecting her and fighting for her in the very end. That like was pretty close plot wise, I thought.
Grant, Doc, any thoughts on MCs 1 through 4?
No, I mean, as someone who's a big fan of hip hop, I don't listen to Japanese hip hop, but as someone who's a big fan of hip hop, I thought it was a really welcome element, and I didn't think of them necessarily as a Greek chorus when I was watching it. But as soon as someone on my timeline mentioned this is a Greek tragedy, I was like, oh, they're a chorus, exactly. So that all kind of tracked in. I thought they were a great addition. I'm glad that they were interesting characters. I liked the different ways that it was used specifically. Like we saw just kind of hip hop is a pretty versatile genre for self-expression, and the way we see them both sort of narrating off screen, we see them narrate off screen or hear them narrate off screen to fill in the gaps. We see them just spending their time freestyling with each other. We also have that one scene where dude with the shades pretty much lays it all out there in sort of a personal rap to
That's what
Such a fantastic scene.
so we
That's
see
really good.
I think people, well, I don't want to paint with broad strokes. I think people who don't listen to hip hop perhaps don't realize the ways that it can be used for self-expression and the sort of kind of gut impact and life experience that it conveys really, really well. So I really appreciated that. I appreciated both that they were there, how they were used, the versatility. I thought they were probably. It's strange to me to see, because I've seen clips from some of the OVAs and things like that now since watching it, and seeing them look like the Yu Yu Hakusho cast, being a bunch of street youths, is just very different. I'm like, I can't even imagine them like that, honestly.
It's like you also took a bunch of the elements that just kind of get thrown in there for like show sometimes in the manga and was like, what if everyone had their own story with like 100 layers of meaning?
What if characters?
Yeah, I like, from on just like a personal note, it was really heartening to see somebody in anime actually taking hip hop and hip hop culture in Japan seriously, to the point where like they hired actual MCs to voice their characters, which, by the way, they did well. They did great, not just as like MCs with freestyling in the show, but also like did well as seiyuu, which is saying a lot.
Yeah, I wouldn't have known that they weren't professional seiyuu if you didn't tell me that. They crushed it. Like, they absolutely knocked it out of the park. And like, the show, like, it's funny because they seem so kind of incidental in when they first sort of stride into the frame of the show, but by the end they're so instrumental. Like, the show would have been much lesser without them. Like, totally. Not just because of, you know, Kyun-Kyun's amazing moment in episode 4, but like they just support the characters so well. They support like what's happening, like even the ones that like go bad, you know, support kind of the larger messages of the show. And there's actually a scene like the one scene within that sticks with me maybe the most is when they get held up by the cops in episode 5. Like, that's some real shit. Yeah. Like, I even on rewatch, like, that was still super tense for me, just because it felt like something that someone captured on a cell phone like last month. Yeah. And it was just, like, and of course, Super Miki, you know, steps in to diffuse it, but that was a fantastic moment. And they get to have a lot of those, and they shine, and they're fantastic characters, and they, like, the Anime is Lit folks have eloquently put, like, they also serve kind of the classical function in the story of being the chorus very, very well. So Yuasa to make the Greek chorus a fucking hip hop. Yeah. So great. It's just, it's really heartening for me personally, having done like a ton of research into like hip hop and its place in Japanese culture, which is like super unique, interesting thing. Anime is among some of the most conservative media that Japan puts out a lot of the times. And that results in something as, you know, subversive and transgressive as hip hop in Japan being relegated to like a punchline. Yeah. Or like a seiyuu doing like a really bad impression of a rapper, or just like, I mean, there's like an entire episode of Detroit Metal City that's basically like dedicated to the lead singer of like the band in that show, just like absolutely beating the shit out of a hip hop artist in Ikebukuro at his own game, which is like, it's a really dumb show to bring up in this discussion, but it's also a really good like example of like how anime usually portrays hip hop, which is like not great. So to see them like not only take it seriously, but also like just cast MCs in their show and have them do a bang up job and like do stuff that's so good that I wish that like we got like a Devilman Crybaby mixtape. Yeah. Yeah. A la like the Hamilton mixtape. Cause like I really like, everyone's freaking out about Devilman no Uda, and like I understand, but like I want to fucking hear like Devilman no Uda remix featuring Ken the 390, and like I want to hear that. That's hey, yo, this is Wemu and Kyun-Kun dropping that Sabbath on you. Like, man, I need that. I really hope that they somehow end up doing more like actual raps for the show.
Devilman season 2.
Yeah, season 2 is just is a hip hop AU.
Just a mixtape. Don't even do an animated show. Just do a mixtape.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really authentic.
I'm not kidding.
We're running pretty long here, and I don't want to get too bogged down on the differences between the manga and Crybaby before we get into kind of one of the things that I feel like has been greatly overlooked in the discussion of Crybaby, and that is the discussion of its actual like production. like the sort of meat and potatoes that we truck with here on Ono Anime, of like sort of, you know, who's behind this thing, you know, what's the studio like, who are the people that actually put this thing together. And I have compiled some pretty extensive notes on you know, who exactly is behind this stuff. So I'm just going to go through it real quick and then or like sort of piecemeal, and then we can sort of discuss. So the studio behind this whole thing is Masaki Yuasa's studio that he founded with a Korean animator named An-young Choi, called Science Saru. They're among some of the most crazy animation studios I have seen to date, mostly because they seem to be ridiculously dedicated to welcoming foreign animators into their ranks. In fact, as we get through these credits, you'll notice a lot of names that are not Japanese, but just the fact that, you know, one of the co-founders of the studio is a British-trained, South Korean-born Japanese resident in An-young Choi is certainly unique in the pantheon of, you know, sort of Japanese studios. Their previous works include the 2017 films Lu Over the Wall and The Night is Short, Walk On Girl. They did some animation cooperation on some of the earlier Garo anime. They worked on the last Yokai Watch movie and also the last Crayon Shin-chan movie, which I really want to see what their cuts from Crayon Shin-chan look like, because that seems like something that they would be very good.
A lot of kung fu fighting in that new movie.
Yeah. They also worked on...
that wasn't a joke.
They did the 2 episodes of Space Dandy that Yuasa directed. I actually want to say Choi directed one of those and Yuasa did the other, but they were both so fucking similar, I couldn't tell them apart. And they also worked on Typhoon Neruda. You know what that is?
Yeah, we had that in the movie panel we did at Metro.
Oh, right. Yeah, that was a movie
about
from a couple years ago.
And
and they have also done some work on American shows like Adventure Time and OKKO. OKKO, by the way, fucking awesome show. I love that show
it's
a
a
lot.
good cartoon.
Trigger storyboarded the opening for that show. So it's just chock full of good anime talent. Yeah, like I said, they hire a lot of they hire a lot of foreign talent. But I think mostly they're really famous for just being a studio that sort of Masaki Yuasa has built around himself as a studio that can kind of keep up with his visual style.
Before they started doing the movies and stuff, they like to push the way with Flash animation. Obviously not like Newgrounds Flash, but using Flash as a tool to make more traditional looking stuff. The
large portion of the ending of episode 1, particularly in Sabbath with all those crazy transformation scenes, a lot of that was animated in Flash. Specifically, my favorite cut from the entire show, which is the last shot of episode 1, which is that long, drawn-out sort of panoramic rotating around Devilman, and it zooms in on him smiling really menacingly, and there's like fire.
That was the pose that they never went back to.
that is like the shot that they used most when promoting the show, and that was animated entirely in Flash by not Japanese people, which is really interesting to me considering how important that shot was in sort of establishing the visual look of, you know, this new Devilman, because the Devilman in this is like very much like, you know, what Devilman looks like in modern times, but is also still very heavily stylized and interesting. So we've already talked a lot about Masaki Yuasa and his previous works on this, so I'm just going to mention that he directed this, and then we can move on and talk about all the other people that worked on this show, because we all know about Masaki Yuasa now. But so the script and series composition was written by a gentleman named Ichiro Okochi, which is actually a name that would be pretty familiar to anybody that likes Code Geass, because he is the script comp or the script writer and series comp behind that, and works a lot of the time on stuff that the director of that show, Goro Taniguchi, does. He did a lot of mid-2000s Sunrise anime, including the anime adaptation of Planetes, which is fucking fantastic.
Yeah.
I know the name Taniguchi.
Best thing Taniguchi has ever done.
Yep.
I know the name Taniguchi. I didn't realize that Okochi works with him all the time.
Okochi is very prolific. He's way more prolific now than he was back then too. He did the series comp script on Cabinet of the Iron Fortress, the 3 Berserk Golden Age arc movies, Azumanga Daioh, a lot of Lupin the Third Part 5, Princess Principal, and everybody's favorite anime, Valvrave the Liberator.
If y'all could see the face I'm making.
It's not a good face.
That's a bad anime.
Yep, it sure is. Character design was actually split down the middle between 2 people. The first person was Ayumi Karashima. She was the animation director on several episodes of Eureka 7, is also the actual animation director on the new High Evolution movies that are coming out right now. She was also animation director on a super underrated movie called Fusée Memoirs of a Huntress, which everybody should watch if they get the chance.
That
yes,
movie's
it
good.
is.
The show is pretty too.
It was on Hulu for a while.
No shit.
Yeah, and she also was the apparel and costume designer on Oran Host Club. So you know she's really good at drawing clothes.
Thank you for those clothes that I've seen at every convention since 2000 shit.
Yeah. The other half is a much more notable name in Kiyotaka Oshiyama, who is the director of Flip Flappers, and is a veteran key animator and designer who we will get to more later because he is not only the character designer of the show, he's a lot of things. There are a couple of notable.
Can I ask a question? Feel free to edit this out or whatever.
Anybody jump in at any point if you guys have questions or comments.
So, didn't the director of Flip Flappers change midstream? Did this person direct the first part or the second part? I feel like that show had a big production. Maybe it was the writer that changed and not the director, and I'm misremembering. But I feel like there was a big production shift midway through.
As far as I was able to glean, he was the director, so there might be the writing staff or something.
It's
like
probably
that.
the writer. Yeah, I think it's the writer, and certainly Studio Pablo shifted away for the last third. But yeah, I think it was the writer that changed.
He is the only person on ANN that is credited as director for Flip Flappers. So
that's my bad.
But ANN is often wrong, so I could be talking about it on my ass. But anyways, there are a couple notable story.
Otaku Coin. Too soon.
We don't need to talk about that. There are a couple notable storyboarders on this show. We don't need to spend too much time on this, but there's Keisuke Shinohara, who is someone who I am almost positive works for Trigger. He was an episode director on several Little Witch Academia episodes, also an episode director on several Kniver episodes, and did a lot of work on Flip Flappers as well, which I know is not a Trigger property, but he's also worked on a lot of Trigger stuff, so I'm assuming he works for Trigger. There's also 2 foreigners, the ones that I mentioned before, that they actually run the Flash animation department. Their names are Abel Gongora and Juan Manuel Laguna. I think they're Spanish, I want to say. I think they're both from Spain. But yeah, they're the Flash animation chiefs. So, I think we can assume that they were kind of imported by, Science Saru to work for their, expertise in Flash animation, especially since a lot of Western shows, especially the stuff on Cartoon Network, uses a lot of Flash animation, and they're like sort of veterans of that type of stuff. They both have a lot of credits on more recent, Western animation. So, they kind of work for Science Saru in that sort of aspect. A lot of really famous people directed episodes of Devilman Crybaby as well. But there are also a lot of first time, like there were a lot of key animators that got their first shot ever at directing an episode of anything. And that was Ayataka Tanomura and Tomohisa Shimoyama. We also had Katsunori Shibata, who directed episodes 2 and 8. Shibata is a frequent collaborator design-wise with Kunihiko Ikuhara on his later works, specifically Penguin Drum and Yurikoma Arashi. He directed several episodes and the opening of Penguin Drum, so I don't know how much of that style bled over into 2 and 8. I'm going to have to go back and watch those specific episodes, but and then we had an episode directed by Kiyotaka Oshiyama, again, the director of Flip Flappers and the character designer. I kind of buried the lead on him, though, because he's also the mecha designer for the new Fooly Cooly series, 2 and 3. He did a ridiculous amount of design work for Space Dandy. He basically designed like all of the like aliens and spaceships. He was the animation director on 5 episodes of Denocoil, which is a show that we hold in very high esteem around here, but is overlooked a lot of the time. And yeah, all the stuff I mentioned before with him as well. And then there's, rounding out this list, there is a gentleman named Toru Yoshida. I suggest that everybody listening and or watching to this go to his ANN page right now, because it takes about 5 minutes to scroll through all of his credits. He is the most prolific key animator I have ever seen, ever. Like the guy has literally I wrote that he has probably more experience than everybody else at Science Saru combined in terms of just like pure years. He's old enough to have worked on shows like Armored Trooper Votoms and the original Space Cobra. And he has continued to work as a key animator almost exclusively until like literally this day, like did cuts on like Iron-Blooded Orphans last year. He did multiple cuts on this show and also directed an episode. I mean, the guy is like probably pushing almost 70 at this point, and he's working a like young key animator schedule, and I genuinely don't know how the guy does what he does. But yeah, Toru Yoshida, he is incredibly impressive and also just kind of like mind-numbing to think about someone working for that long. Couple more credits here by the end. One of the, I think, best things about Crybaby is its music, specifically all that synthwave that is very fucking good.
Mm-hmm.
That music was all composed by Kensuke Ushio. Not one of the more prolific composers in the anime game, sort of new. But he did do the soundtrack to Ping Pong the Animation. He also did the Silent Voice soundtrack, or contributed pieces to the Silent Voice soundtrack, which was good.
Yes.
And also contributed a significant amount of music to the Space Dandy original soundtrack, which also was good. Yes. But I would say this is among some of his best work stylistically, just because it's not every day that you hear synthwave in an anime, which is pretty cool.
It's true. I think all that stuff is really, really good. But like the really minimal piano ballads, I think, are what I'm gonna remember forever from this show.
Well, the fact that he was able to do both is pretty awesome, amazing. And like make both of them work is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And then finally, we don't usually get too far into like obscure credits like art direction on this show, but I think with Crybaby, it's super important because its use of color and a lot of its background art is very particular and sort of evokes a very particular mood. And there's a reason for that, is because the art direction on this was done by a guy named Ryo Kono. He was the art director on Mob Psycho 100, Paranoia Agent, The Rolling Girls, Space Dandy, and 2 of Yuasa's earlier works, Kimonozume and Kaiba. So the guy has some experience.
Oh my god, that's a fucking resume.
Yeah, all those
dude.
have incredible.
Those
backgrounds.
are they have incredible colors,
incredible backgrounds and incredible colors. And yeah, Ryo Kono, if you want your show to fucking look,
just pop.
You get Ryo Kono. Yeah, I think he's
the real pop team.
It's interesting because we almost never talk about art direction on the show because we like talking about Sakuga a lot of the time. But yeah, it's very important in a show like this, or like Mob Psycho or Paranoia Agent, or literally any of those shows, to have good background art and good static art. And I think that's something that Crybaby, weirdly enough, does very well, even though it is very minimal visually at times, especially like in the background, I would say, but it works. I mean, it's clearly it has a hell of a look. So, well, guys, I've exhausted all of my notes. Is there anything burning that that we want to talk about. I think we're nearing the end of our time together. We've somehow managed to create a podcast.
It's not super,
despite technology.
It's like slightly related to production. Just a note on the music. The Devilman no Uta song that everybody loves, sung by Avu-chan. Avu-chan is actually transgender, so I just think that's pretty rad. I follow them on Twitter. Yeah.
That's really cool.
I don't know pronouns specifically, but that they do identify as transgender. I saw an interview with them in Japanese with German subtitles, so I don't know very much, but yeah. It's just, I think it's just another another drop in the bucket of ways that Yuasa was actually trying to give people a voice and you let them use their own voice instead of just his, like you said, Mark, with the hip hop artists, he wasn't just using it as a gimmick, he meant it, and I think it's really awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's really cool. Yeah, I mean that adds a whole new layer of depth, I think, to things. And I don't know, you would assume that would be a very intentional move on the production's part to include someone like that. Obviously it's, far be it for me to put meaning to actions that I did not make and don't understand. But yeah, I mean, it regardless of the intent, the result is great.
Yep.
On that part. And knowing that just makes me all the more happy that is, I don't know. It's the more I think about it, the less I think I know the whole next Miyazaki thing is a really stupid thing to say, but I almost want to say that Masaki Yuasa is kind of becoming anime's John Waters in a certain way. In the way that he's just including a bunch of marginalized voices in his works and also making shit that shocks the ever loving hell out of people.
Also, excuse me, don't you mean the next Makoto Shinkai?
Yeah.
Jesus. The next Makoto Shinkai, who is the next Hayao Miyazaki.
Just line them up.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Just make the evolution chart of anime directors. Oh my god.
I love how he was called the next Miyazaki as early as his second film, Place Promised in our early days, and I thought, really? From this? That is not a good movie. And then he finally lived up to it a decade later, which is hilarious.
It's so stylistically different. If they made that evolution chart, though, Miyazaki would be behind all of them with a giant fucking knife.
Yeah. Yeah.
For real.
Yes.
And
setting the chart on fire.
And Oshii would be right in front of him with a gun. Because if there's anybody that talks more shit about everybody else in the anime industry than Hayao Miyazaki, it's Mamoru Oshii. That man fucking hates everything.
Yamakan would be off to the side trying to be relevant.
Everybody thinks that Hideaki Anno hates anime more than anyone, but those are only the people that haven't ever read an interview with Oshii, who hates anime so much he has not made a good one since 1997. Or sorry, since 2001. Whatever Ghost in the Shell 2 Innocence came out, that was the last good thing that he ever made.
I think we're forgetting Tomino's ability to hate too. Tomino has much hate in his heart as well.
That's true.
Let's at least give him honorary mention for despising other anime creators.
He doesn't limit his hate to anime. Tomino just hates
No, but anybody that needs evidence of Tomino's hate just needs to watch Reconquista and G to know how much he hates all of us.
Tomino has as much confusion as hate in his heart, though.
That's true. He doesn't know what he wants.
Hate in his heart, confusion in his mind.
Sometimes he wants a show that is devoted to the mechanics of how to shit in a Gundam's cockpit. And
that was an enlightening episode.
That's what Reconquista and G was. There's literally...
G-Reco, the anime that literally took a shit in Gundam's cockpit.
Yeah.
Jimmy Gnome is angry at you right now.
I have a figure of whatever the... I'm looking at a figure of whatever the main girl from that show is right now, so I didn't hate it completely. I also have a G-Self model on my shelf, so...
I tried so hard. I wanted to like it, and I just gave up. He gave an interview during it where he was just like, yeah, this one kind of got away from me.
He sure did.
Just like, gee, thanks, bud.
He gave it a rating, yeah.
You fucking think? Like, Jesus Christ. Anyways, Devilman.
One thing that I wanted to say, and then I'll toss the mic to Grant because I want to hear
his big
Yeah,
theory.
me too.
the big picture theory that he alluded to earlier. I'll just say, like, I didn't touch on this in our pod that we did on it, but I sort of appreciate, like, that you can enjoy this show at a lot of different levels and it doesn't really judge you for it. Like, the reason it's so popular, I think, is because you can kind of engage with it as lightly or as deeply as you want, and you can go really, really deep, and it's got stuff for you. I mean, there's all kinds of just philosophy, religious stuff, lit crit, like LGBTQ stuff. Like, there's so much there to mine. But also, if you just want to, like, tweet about how hot Rio is,
Yeah,
that's
most of my
fine
timeline.
too.
Man, I don't get the Rio love. I just don't.
Follow
Why
the cosplayers.
love Rio when you can have such a good boy with a deep V and big muscles?
I have
That's
two
all I
hands.
want.
OVA Tidia Akira, is that what you're referencing?
I mean, I'm on Team Akira, like many people,
Same.
but I get
I'm
the
with you,
Rio
Grant.
attraction because Rio is a very driven sunny side up egg, and
Is he?
like,
Is he?
Heard it here first.
if you've not seen the art, if you've not seen the art of Rio from above, the art of Rio from above with his little yellow hair and his white coat, he's a sunny side up egg. But he has all the drive
You're right.
and willingness to act of Satan. So I mean, that's a powerful. I get that for people. I see why people would want that. It's not
There's
for
enough
me.
room in my heart for everyone in this show.
Yeah, really.
He also in addition to being a sort of even possibly more beautiful version of Griffith from Berserk in this adaptation.
Another
in the
person
80s
nobody
OVA,
should like.
He looks like fucking Char Aznable. Like, no matter what era he's in, he's
Now
just
there's
hot.
someone I can get behind.
Good.
Literally.
Right behind him.
If you put OVA Rio and the Char like red jacket with the sleeves cut off and the shades, I might change my vote. I mean, I'm Team Akira now, but I mean,
That's why I tweeted this morning, Rio Asuka Vagina.
There's my one caveat is OVA Rio is hotter than the sun. He's a beautiful boy. Like Crybaby Rio is
That jacket in episode 1 says all I need to know.
get away
I'm
from
about it.
him. That also I love the people
I
on
love it.
Twitter
No,
that
it's
immediately found that jacket and everybody realized it was
Yes.
like a $10,000 jacket
It's just made it that much
good. It's
better.
so good.
made of like a down
It's
comforter.
I'm
actually a
waiting for
blanket.
somebody to do the cosplay with the real one.
Yeah. No, I can't wait to see all the cosplayers that are literally buying like IKEA down comforters and just like safety pinning them around themselves to make that cosplay. It's going to be great.
I was so excited for all the cosplayers for this
took me
show.
a long time digging under all my Louis rags to find my coat just like that. I totally forgot that I had one.
There is one moment in the very beginning when Rio is like driving to Sabbath with Akira in his like super dope Lamborghini or whatever, where Akira just looks over and he's just like, "Is that?" And Rio just picks up and he's just like, "Yeah, it's a machine gun." And he literally says machine gun like out of Japanese. It's really great. I'm just like,
All the English, that's another reason I love Rio, is all the English that Ayumi Murase spits.
Say it, subs.
a demon could be right beside you.
Professor Fikira.
Professor Fikira.
Professor. God, I love
It's so
it.
good.
But it's
Oh my
so-
god, it was way too good of an impression. Holy
He
shit.
worked his damn butt off.
Yeah.
He sure did.
Yeah, that's another thing that we kind of have not talked about at all, and we don't really need to get too far into it, but like, man, the voice acting was really good in this show, huh?
Good.
Oh my gosh, yes.
An achievement. Truly.
Have any of you guys tried it in English? I watched an episode in English
Not
for shits
interested.
and giggles. It was pretty good. I mean, not as good as the Japanese, but it was good.
Yeah.
It was serviceable for sure.
Yeah, I switched it I switched it over to English because I was like, I need to hear these raps in English and laugh, but they're in Japanese.
What?
Yeah, they kept them in Japanese.
They keep the raps in Japanese.
They did the one.
hard.
I'm sorry for forgetting the name, but the important one, the one where he's Kyu's. They did translate that, and I know that because Torbjorn from Overwatch, his voice actor did that, and I'm like, I need to see Torbjorn rap. Let's do it. Doesn't sound like Torb.
I know, but that's
the same
crazy
actor.
range. Good for that guy. Hearing Ami Koshimizu go from her polite girl voice to her incredibly sexy Ryuko voice was among some of the greatest things that I have ever witnessed in an anime.
Where's the donkey he haws in here?
She went from Sailor Jupiter to Ryuko. That's the transformation, and it was wonderful, and I love it. And I love Ami Koshimizu. Super underrated performance in that show. Miko's great. Anyway, Grant,
it's your turn.
why don't you bestow upon us your theory, and then we have completely buried the lead because we have not talked about the time skip or the time loop at all.
Well, that's gonna key into mine. So this is my big messy theory. I don't think it's the end all be all, but it's my pitch, and I pitched something similar on my pod. And hopefully soon I'll have an article up that's even more detailed. But the I guess kind of the big picture of it is, I think and this is sort of the macro view. This is our bird's eye view. I think the interpersonal threads are just as important, if not more important, and they mean something. But I think as a macro narrative, as a whole, taken as an entire work, it's largely a story of Rio. And I think that unlike some other works, I won't name any names or call anybody out, but the religious imagery is relevant to the story, but it's also not.
Grant, what are you talking about?
It's not just window
Please
dressing.
enlighten us.
But, I don't know, a certain robot show.
You mean that the use of the esoteric Hebrew realm of the soul's guff is not relevant to this show in any way?
It's true. No, but I think it's relevant. But I also think to simply view this through the lens, like through a Judeo-Christian lens, does a disservice, and I think it ignores a lot of really. I think you have to strictly view it through a Judeo-Christian lens. You're cutting out a lot of really important elements. I think probably the most glaring and obvious is the fact that. And again, all of this comes with a huge multi-asterisk of I never went to seminary, I'm not an expert in any of the things that I'm talking about, so I could very well be getting plenty of things wrong. But the Judeo-Christian narrative is not really a cyclical one, it's primarily a linear one. Whether or not you accept
there is an end.
Yeah, whether or not you accept revelations as strictly, sort of strictly from the text, or whether you view it as metaphorical about the fall of the Roman Empire, whatever, the idea of there being a Messiah and then a second coming. This is kind of an ABC, and that story ends and it is completed. So the cyclical nature already sort of cracks the sort of just using Judeo-Christianity to view the story. And I also think the other elements, like, say, the complete absence of God or a Christ figure in it, makes it very, without any Messiah or God, there are a lot of big gaps there, but I don't think they're empty. I think this is sort of...
Oh, God is there. Well, he's just a dropper of nukes.
He's playing Missile Command, and there's only one target, and he's just clicking Earth repeatedly.
Yeah, this is a deistic universe rather than a theistic one, I think.
Yeah, in the Devilman universe, God does indeed exist, and he is actually mentioned by Rio in Crybaby at least once, but basically just to say that he's an asshole and never actually appears.
Right. He's definitely...
He wants to fight that guy.
He's definitely the great clock breaker analogy, or watch breaker analogy, if you will. He makes it just to break it, I guess. Right. But I think we have to fuse in some Buddhist concepts, such as the samsara and the birth and rebirth cycles of life, and particularly an understanding of karma. And again, this is all layman's, but I think the crux of Devilman Crybaby is that it is a fusion of both sort of, I guess, Judeo-Christian concepts of communal love and individual love and how those things are intertwined, as well as being karmically tied to things and cycles of birth and rebirth. So essentially, Rio is both too karmically tied to something. He's basically like karma in the sense that, not karma as it is often portrayed in the West, which is sort of a metaphysical accounting, if you will. I do X many positives and X many negatives, and I balance out at the end. It's more in the sense that karma is ties to things. It's reinforcing separations between ourselves and others, and sort of viewing this world, sort of taking it at face value and getting attached to things creates more separation. And that when you're karmically tied to something, whether it's positive or negative, whether you hate something or love something, that forces your hand and sort of encourages further actions with consequences you can't always predict. If you hate something, you're going to be so focused on it that you ignore other things in your life. But even positive things like love, if you love something, you might do anything to protect it, or you might neglect or you might view it in a lens that makes you think that it's perfect and it can't be criticized, and all these kinds of things. So essentially, my sort of argument is that Ryo is karmically, he's obsessed with Akira, and he loves him and only him, and it's this obsession that keeps him karmically tied to Akira and literally willing to destroy all of creation for him and ignore all of creation. He values nothing except for Akira. He would kill kittens in boxes, he would kill people in clubs, he would end the earth, and none of it affects him. None of it, even at the very end when he thinks they're together finally and alone. It's only when something hurts Akira that it really is important to him. So he's karmically obsessed with Akira, and so that's why he keeps reliving this samsara. He's stuck in these birth and rebirth cycles and living it over and over again, and he has to learn, in the sort of fusion with the Judeo-Christian elements, he has to learn communal love for everyone. He has to learn that loving one person or one thing to the exclusion of all others is not healthy. It's not how you live. It's not how you be part of a wider community of kind of connected people. And whereas Akira and Miko and Miki not only do they love each other and in certain specific like romantic ways, such as with Miko and Miki, or maybe Akira and Miki at certain points, but they also love each other as friends and as part of a community. Like they're in it together, and they're literally running a race together, passing this kind of baton of communal love, at least in my interpretation. And every time they try to hand it to Ryo, he drops it again and again and again and again, and he refuses to sort of give himself over to that communal love. He's obsessed with Akira specifically. And so because he won't, basically every iteration of this, every, creation to death, a new moon and all that stuff, is him trying to learn the lesson of wider communal love and appreciating others, in addition to loving Akira, but not just explicitly Akira, and being willing to valuing no one else and destroying everything in his path. End.
Grant, it's interesting that I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but it's interesting that you bring samsara specifically into this, because there is a representation. It's often called the Wheel of Life, but in Sanskrit it's called the Bhava Chakra. It's sort of a visual representation, sort of like a visual guide to samsara in Buddhism, and within it there are 6 realms, and one of them is the Hell realm, in which hell beings endure unimaginable suffering for eons of time. There's also a hungry ghost realm, and demigod realm. Yeah, they all have different Sanskrit names. Basically, what you need to know is the demons could most certainly be interpreted as dwellers of one of these realms. I almost want to say that they probably are more akin to the Preta or hungry ghost realm, because they suffer from extreme hunger and thirst, and they wander constantly in search of food and drink, only to be miserably frustrated anytime they come close to actually getting what they want. But yeah, I mean, like the whole concept of like the Wheel of Life and samsara is definitely like a pretty pivotal influence, I think, on the whole cycle of what the show is presenting. And yeah, obviously, like, I think on the surface, the presentation of the demons in the show could be considered as like a pretty traditional Judeo-Christian representation of like what it is to be like to have a demon realm, and then they're to be like possessed by a demon. Like those are things that we're familiar with in like, you know, Judeo-Christian lore. But then as soon as you start examining like, oh wait, the demons are actually like prehistoric creatures and existed on the earth before man ever was there, like you start to realize like, oh yeah, this is something like way different than like the traditional Judeo-Christian like concept of like God and the devil.
Those shots of like those scenes of like both in the OVAs and Crybaby of like the primordial earth.
Yeah.
It's just a constant cycle of demons killing each other. It's just fucking, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, it's insane.
Like, is there ever a moment when something is not murdering something else?
The entire opening sequence to the birth is among some of the most like ridiculously over violent, like needless setup I've ever seen.
Yes.
It's awesome,
Hashtag
but
Twitter.
It's crazy.
It is Earth, planet murder.
All right, so let's go out on this. Since Grant, your idea, your idea of bringing up like samsara kind of feeds into a central theme of Devilman that I think Crybaby actually takes for granted in assuming that its audience already knows about, which I think might have actually been a somewhat grave mistake on Yuasa's part, in that the entire basis of Devilman is predicated on a time loop that Ryo is trapped inside of, created by God as a punishment. And Danny and Kay, you guys told me at some point that the manga actually goes into this way more. So why don't you talk about this, because you two have more knowledge of this than either of us.
I misremembered slightly, but like the theory still holds with everything that Ryo just kind of like expositionizes in the manga. That's definitely a word. I run a literature podcast. Like mostly it goes into detail about like Ryo's origins, in specifically like the first iteration where he was Satan. He became somebody who had false memories of being Ryo Asuka and like didn't actually live that life. And yeah, it kind of goes more into his struggle of like realizing that he's Satan, but like like the main cycle that it talks about is just with like Earth being created by God, and then the devils show up, and then God tries to wipe out the devils. Okay, can you back me up on this? I'm losing a little bit track of this.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I read it and I did not catch as much of the like time loop stuff in the manga, and I wasn't sure if I just wasn't paying attention or what.
I think I don't necessarily think that you have to have prior knowledge of it. Like we were able to kind of piece it together because we rewatched it. We all rewatched it for the pod we did, and so like comparing the opening scenes of the first episode and then the final shots, like the imagery speaks pretty loudly that this is a eternal return of the same happening here. That, you know, God wants to get it right, and a couple of or wants us to get it right. I don't really know, but a couple of failed attempts have occurred before the current Earth has been. I didn't have trouble catching on to the suggestion of a time loop just from Crybaby, like having nothing else. The double moon helped a lot.
I think I had to watch it twice to catch on, but yeah.
Yeah, I still having
the first time, like you're just getting hit with imagery and you're just like disoriented. But yeah, on the rewatch it is easier. You're like, why are they showing two Earths, one with a ring of rubble around it? Oh, I see what's happening here. So
from what I am to gather, at least my understanding of it, like through my journey into the black hole that is the Devilman Wiki.
Yeah, that was mine too.
It seems to me that it is like God has created this time loop less because of like humanity's imperfections, and more, at least in my interpretation, that he's trying to get Ryo to realize something that he does in the end of Crybaby, in that like he's basically punishing him into trying to actually feel something for someone. And also like reading a lot about like how the manga ends versus how Crybaby ends, it seems as if the ending of the manga, Ryo's emotions are more concerned with him being sad that he wasn't able to save the demons, because his whole motivation is that demons deserve as much of a right to live as humanity does.
Yeah.
Whereas in Crybaby, it's a lot more about like him losing. Like, it seems like him losing Akira is kind of just like the cherry on top of the sadness pie in the manga. Whereas in Crybaby, that's like 100% of the reason why he starts to like feel something. Is he's just like, he's not like, oh no, there's no more demons. He's like, oh no, my best friend is dead, and I'm just now realizing that.
Yeah.
I mean, having read the manga, Danny and Kay, do you guys think that that's somewhat of an accurate comparison?
Yeah, I do. The end of the manga, he, like, the realization that I saw him come to in the end of the manga, he's kind of sitting there like comparing and contrasting himself and God.
Yeah.
In that, like, he's like, yeah, God came in here and thought that the demons were gross and that like he had a right to wipe them out. But now that I think about it, I did kind of think the same way about humans, so I guess like it wasn't actually better.
Yeah.
And he has a line about like the strong always think that they have the right to destroy the weak. And maybe that's not right.
Yeah, he does express regret, but like more like in a sense that he failed.
Yeah. Yes.
In his original objective. I like the first thought that I had when I read the last page of the manga was, you thought the Crybaby ending was unsatisfying.
Yeah.
Because it's just less of an emotional period at the end of the sentence.
Yeah. This all makes sense with like the fact that Yuasa has like come out and said like that Crybaby is Ryo's story.
Yeah, I think that's a super valid interpretation, that it, like, Ryo is like the mover in everything. But
yeah, he is the central like hub around which everything sort of rotates.
Everything happens by his design, and he's the one who like learns a lesson by the end of it. But it's not as much as of an emotional lesson, quite in the sense that Crybaby is.
Yeah.
The other thing that we should point out is that in the manga and the and Crybaby is that Psycho Jenny is the only one that is aware of the time loop as it's happening. Which is why, especially in Crybaby, I don't know how like close she is to Ryo throughout the manga, but definitely in Crybaby, she literally is standing at Ryo's side throughout the entire thing.
Yeah,
basically
she's in maybe
guiding
5
him
pages of the
into
manga.
guiding him into becoming Satan. And I think like I think that's something that I will notice on further rewatches. I rewatched it a second time, and I still had to be told about the time loop, and I think that's especially frustrating for me, considering how like Psycho Jenny's entire role in that show is predicated on your knowledge that, or your realization that like, oh shit, she's not just a devout follower, she's like actually guiding him towards an inevitable conclusion, which is something that I don't really pick up on. I am also dumb and and bad at picking up on stuff like this, so I'm not surprised that I didn't, but it's still like frustrating that like I wasn't able to catch that, like even on a second rewatch. Just like, oh, this is a time loop. Jenny is the only one that actually knows what's going on, and she's guiding Ryo instead of just being like, you know, right hand koosh ball. So, all right. Any other burning thoughts? Because it's getting late. Yeah. we gotta wrap this up probably.
Sure, I'll leave you with a thinker. So the other theory I feel pretty strong about, I feel like that's supported by the text. Ryo needs to learn communal love to break his karmic cycle of obsession. I have a crazier theory though, you can chew on, I don't know. So here's my thing. I think every time there's a new moon, there's a new Miki. So like this second cycle, because like Miko and Miki, like she's also Miki, but they just call her Miko. So I think, and I have no basis for this, but every time the cycle keeps going, there's another Miki that also has to struggle, like not in the sense that they're carbon copies, but there's another person named Miki who has to struggle with identity and come to terms with who they are, and keeps increasing the sort of exponential power of that communal love, so that eventually there will just be enough Mikis that Ryo will learn to love.
Actually, actually kind of makes sense considering how if you assume that the opening of the show is the first time loop ending and the show itself is the second one, there are two Mikis.
There's always the number of Mikis is the moon's plus one. And that's why Miko is struggling so much. She doesn't know why she's here. She feels like a carbon copy of someone else because she is.
Wait.
But she's finding her.
I will accept this theory if all Mikis are always gay together.
I think that's almost required.
Yes.
Like I don't see how else it works.
Is it gay if it's your clone?
Yes.
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 What?
Is it gay if it's your clone? Yes.
Yes.
It's always gay. That's the rule of good anime. Gotta be
Pretty
gay.
sure Star Wars Episode 2 cleared that up with clones, right? Am I not?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't want to ever hear the word clone again because I literally have spent the last 72 hours watching Altered Carbon, which is basically all about clones. So I'm kind of done with clones. But anyways, let's.
My problem with clones is that they're all the same.
Oh man! If there was ever a better time to leave, I don't know.
Great.
So,
I did it.
Grant, where is the best place for everybody to find you and your work online?
Well, if Twitter's a bridge, I'm under it. Constantly tweeting about bad puns and tokusatsu and things. You can follow me at Grant the Thief. If you care to, you can also find me at the Blade Licking Thieves podcast. And also, I sometimes blog and things, and you'll probably see more of that in the future. But that's mainly where I'm at now. Ruining your timeline.
Doc, where can we find you and the Warui Deshou and everything else you do?
Yeah, you can tweet me at TheSubtleDoctor. You can Curious Cat me if you want a long-form question or long-form answer. CuriousCat.me/TheSubtleDoctor. You can hear more of mine.
Shiganigans.
Oh my god, it's very late. I was going to say mine and Shadon's shenanigans plus Borgalia a lot of times. And soon to be featuring Danny and Kay at Warui Deshou on iTunes or SoundCloud or YouTube. If you just Google WARUI DESHOU, you can find our stuff. It has a Twitter account as well, which is mostly used to let people know new things are out, but sometimes there are cryptic tweets from that also.
Cool. And finally, Danny and Kay, where can everybody find you guys?
At AnimeIsLitPod on Twitter and also AnimeIsLitPod@gmail.com. Maybe we'll figure out how other social media work, but not yet.
Awesome. Well,
yeah,
it's true.
They're all bad. You don't need to figure them out.
Well, thank all you guys for joining us. It was a hell of an episode. We actually managed to keep it just under 2.5 hours. You can you can find us at onoanime.moe. That's our website. youtube.com/onoanime. Please go subscribe so we can see those numbers go up and get boners about it. We rarely give out our personal Twitters on here, but I feel like that's a mistake considering that's 99% of the Twitter content we generate. So I am at Vermillionaire on Twitter. It's Vermillionaire with a 3 for the last E. Patrick, where were you at on Twitter?
Patrick130M, which is also my AIM username.
Yeah, so if you still have AIM in the year of our Lord 2018. Oh, wait, didn't they?
No, they shuttered it.
Yeah, they
last year.
Yeah. Well,
AIM.
if you're running a private pirate AIM server and you want to add Patrick on this old
that's like
username,
hipster Discord.
Yeah.
Hipster Discord is IRC. You can find me there on Ryzon.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, that's going to do it for us. Thanks so much for joining us. onoanime.moe. Go there, find all our shit. And
I'll be writing live reports for the concerts I see in Japan.
Nice.
Yeah, Patrick's going to Japan pretty soon, so
in 10
expect
days.
Some Japan-related tent
I prefer
coming out of
writing rather than speaking about that. So check out onoanime.moe for that.
Yep, and that is going to do it for us here. Thank you so much to our wonderful guests. Thank you so much for all of the people watching and listening to this episode. We'll see you next time. Blitz and Dagon?